So, admittedly, this is kind of a strange topic, but I'm a virgin, 25 years old, dude, if that matters. And so I thought I would give some perspective on this, because it seems to be one of the main unique perspectives I can give, is being a virgin in a hyper-sexualized society, specifically America. And I just want to discuss some ideas. I'm kind of just going off the top of my mind here. I want to discuss some ideas as to what it means to be a virgin, the negative impacts I've faced from it, and what it's going to look like for our entire society moving forward. One of the main things when I think about being a virgin is I think about the massive... I think about having never experienced sex, which is probably an odd thing. And sometimes I look back at data, and there's insane data. I think it's like from the year 1990, it's like 50% of the population in the US was having sex weekly. I'm pretty sure that's what the stat is. You can go look it up. But it's pretty insane. 50% weekly. There was still like a 13% yearly sexlessness, I believe the stats are at, in 1990. But it was still pretty insane, you know? And I think something just worth knowing is that there's this weird thing when you're a virgin, essentially, where you don't know what sex is. And you only know what society tells you what sex is. And if you're never given an opportunity to experience that for yourself, you're naturally just going to compare yourself, sexlessness, to whatever the society tells you that sex is. And we live in a society that says sex sells, sex is good for the most part, you know? Oh, like all these campaigns on having safe sex. I remember being in high school, which is probably a pretty funny thing, and I remember just being a jaded-ass kid a little bit. And I remember getting like angry, to be honest. I got angry when they would talk about have safe sex and like, you know, what is that dumb fucking like 5-line thing where like Josh and Ashley had a drink, Josh had and then Josh got arrested. You know what I'm saying? I forget what the names were, but I just hated hearing shit like that because I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? It doesn't apply to my reality, but everywhere you go, be so fucking shoved in your face. And then it's like, oh, here's the free condoms because everyone's getting it down, am I right? And you just getting fucking nothing. And I think people really underestimate how that affects someone. Because I used to think it was, or I didn't used to think, but I've always run through different like scenarios in my head. Like, is it biological? Do I really care about what other men and women think? I'm like, yeah, sure, there's an impact of that. And, like, sure, I want to reproduce, but, like, modern sex isn't even really reproduction. It's more like social acceptance. Can make a whole video on that. And so, I don't know, I just kind of sit here and I've always been so annoyed. If anything, the anger is constantly driven, even to this day. And it's anger, you know, where you're told something about sex in, like, the modern media, or when you go outside, or when you look at how people dress, like people being scantily dressed and just like, I don't know. This is probably like a borderline schizophrenic take, and it's probably a schizophrenic video already. I hate Lululemon leggings. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just like such a insanely sexualized thing to wear. Almost nothing's left to the imagination. And it's almost like as a guy, you have to go out into the world and see all these women that wear hyper-sexualized things, and it's like, you know, they're fucking wearing like booty shorts and all this shit has been totally accepted. Even guys with like 7-inch inseam shorts, they used to wear those, you know what I'm saying? And it's just wild because it's so out there. And you just don't know what it is. It's almost like you're getting advertising for something. And you're like, what the fuck? I don't even know what the product is. But then the entire world's telling you the product's really good. The product's the shit. It's the best thing ever, you know? And then you like see guys that only get into marriages because presumably they get into having sex with like a really hot chick. Like a lot of rich guys get fucked over, you know? I know people in software, so maybe that's why I know that. A bunch of nerds that get money and get fucked. I don't know, man. It's just a lot of shit to think about. Because I think that I'm not the only person that has like internal anger. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the video, but I think that there's a massive, massive difference between one set of the society having less sex and the other set of the society having more sex. That's a completely different game theory scenario, completely different than one set having no sex at all versus the other set having sex. Completely different. Because I think it's this thing where it's like guys will even tell me like it's not that big of a deal, and like once you have it you realize how much you overthought it, and I'm just sitting here like, yeah man, that's cool. But like you might as well have told me like, oh yeah, by the way, the Buddha reached nirvana. I'm like, what the fuck? Is that gonna make me reach nirvana instantly? Like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, thanks, bro. Like, what the fuck? It has nothing to do with me reaching nirvana. And it's just wild because it's like this anger just gets built up. And it's funny because you try to let it go in these hyper-sexualized society. You try to be like, okay, maybe I won't have a high chance of getting sex. Maybe it's just not in the cards for me. So you try and let it go. And I think that if we didn't live in this hyper-sexualized society, I would have a much easier time not being angry. This is an open video, to be honest. But it doesn't work out that way. You live in this world where sex sells and you're constantly being shown things. And even if you want to go, just go touch grass, bro. I touched grass. Have you seen what the fucking women are wearing? It's whorish. And I'm not even a hater. It just is what it is. Men are whorish too, you know? I play both sides. And it's just sad. It's just sad because you go out into the world and you see it and it just makes you more angry because it makes you see everything you can't have. It's almost like if the peasant, when he was farming in like the medieval age, it's almost like when the peasant would farm his field and then the king would pick him up and force him to sit in the palace and see how beautiful it is. And then bring him back home to his peasant shit. And then have him do that every single day. Where in reality, maybe the peasant is fully content with his life. And maybe like, you know, his village or whatever the hell, you know, his province, whatever the fuck it's called back then. And his like farm, and maybe he was happy just to have enough food to eat and live. But he becomes unhappy because the king keeps picking him up and throwing him into the palace. The king keeps coming around and saying, you need to see my riches. You need to see all the people I own. And I hope this example is making sense. It has nothing to do with sex. Sex just happens to be this thing that's being paraded around, you know? And I think being a virgin in a hyper-sexualized society just fucks you up because it's almost like you have a constant state of restlessness and anxiety that's being like manufactured into you. It's almost like there's a constantness to it. There's it's almost like it's inescapable. And I don't want to say anything too out of pocket, but it's almost like the inescapability of it forces you to want to rebel or forces you into anger and sometimes even forces you into sadness and these things that kind of crush you a little bit. And it makes you go home at night. Once you've accepted this, it makes you go home at night and it just makes you say like, what is even happening? And then every single passing year you just get a less and less, you know, motivation that the sexual thing or you having sex would ever happen, you know? Like myself having it would ever happen. And it just becomes crushing because then you just don't know these like social cues that people know or like these like groups people know or like how to go to a bar or something and like is pickup artistry the right move, and then you know you just nothing happens. Nothing happens, and the only thing that's constant throughout this whole like borderline spiritual process is this society just keep on just like fucking you up and like making you feel lesser than, and it's brutal. It's brutal, and it pisses me off, you know? It pisses me off once you see it. I think that's what I want to say, is that you just see it and you're just like, damn. I don't know. I just really hope I don't end up like one of those like really crazy guys that ends up doing something crazy, you know? Because I'm 25 and I don't know. I don't know where I'd be at 40 years old, you know? I think everyone's like, oh, you get, like, a lot of people are like, oh, some subset of younger guys get angry, right? And it's completely normal to be angry. And when I got older, all my anger stopped because I had less testosterone. And I'm like, really? What's the history of these older people? Like someone who's 40 years old today, you know? In 2006, they were 20 years old. Like, I feel like that person had to at least have lost their virginity for the most part. Don't you think that's a contributing factor to maybe why you changed a little bit? Maybe why that anger doesn't stay with you as much? That's what I say. And I think that we're entering a new realm of young male virgins like myself who were never going to have that opportunity, it seems, to ever lose that. And it's going to become incredibly, incredibly disastrous. And I'm just speaking from my experience, from what I've seen, you know? And it almost makes me sad because, like, no one understands it. And it's funny because I'm the guy that society should be worried about, and I just want to make this video to tell you that maybe you should be worried because of, like, what's stirring up within myself, you know? Maybe you should be worried. That's all I really get saying this shit. I think this is an important video to listen and maybe hear me out and maybe attempt to not be so judgmental towards what I'm saying. And I think that a lot of y'all should be grateful that maybe I'd even make this video and express, you know, what I'm trying to tell you is happening, like, within my psyche, you know? Just accept that. I think there's a lot of problems with how the world works right now, and I think a big part of it has to do with isolation. And I think that people think isolation is like this social thing. It's true. But I think people also isolate ideas in a similar way to how they isolate people. All right. See you guys.